Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Monday's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. On today's show, we're going to be painfully revisiting Justice League. Then we'll be clearing the fog on the latest Doctor Who news. And I think when I say fog, I mean bullshit. But first of all today, let's painfully revisit Justice League. But why, Mick? Why would you want to talk about this movie? Because what happened then is happening now. Nothing has changed in New Hollywood. In fact, it's getting much worse. We're dealing with charlatans. As I've mentioned in my recent videos, I've become obsessed with The Wizard of Oz. I've become obsessed with 1930s Hollywood. The way the industry was run then is the perfect way to run an entertainment industry or any industry, but you couldn't get a more stark contrast from the 1930s or today. Those people could teach these people, could teach New Hollywood a thing or two. But they don't want to learn anything because their values are not to make the greatest entertainment. Their motivations are not to make the greatest entertainment. You're dealing with a bunch of charlatans. The motto of Hollywood, and I'm talking about the business people back in the day, was if we make the best piece of entertainment, if we do our due diligence and give the audience not what they want, but something that they can enjoy. Because, as I said before, there's a dozen pictures, there's 200 million pictures that have been made in the history of this industry that nobody asked for, but made a lot of money, right? So that used to be the motto. If we make the best entertainment, we'll make money automatically. It's not rocket science, is it, at the end of the day? But these charlatans today are out to misrepresent you. They're out to con you. They're out to manipulate you to get your backside in that movie theatre cinema seat. They're disingenuous people. Now, back in 2016, Zack Snyder was shooting, or whatever year it was, 2015, 2014, whatever it was. Zack Snyder was shooting his very own Justice League. We've all seen it. It's beautiful. It's compelling. We've never seen the likes of it before. Thank fuck that he and us stood together to fight for the Snyder Cut. But the story, goes beyond that, doesn't it? And it's about Justice League. Justice League is important to talk about. I think what happened with Justice League, we and Zack exposed what New Hollywood is all about. What New Hollywood is still about. The same thing happened, with the Solo movie. I'm convinced, the original directors who did the Solo movie would have given us a better Solo movie. But again, nobody asked for a Han Solo movie without Harrison Ford in it. He's too old, it couldn't be done. Move the fuck on and do something new. If you're doing Star Wars stories, you should move on from the Skywalker saga. But they've never really been able to do that because they're charlatans. Disney are charlatans. WB were charlatans. They're still charlatans. Even though recently they're starting to make money again. We will see what happens with next year's Superman. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm also cautiously unoptimistic. Some days it's one thing, some days it's the other. I don't know what movie we're going to get. Back to Justice League, right? So clearly they were scared of the reaction of Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice in the reviews for that Suicide Squad movie. They began frightened. But you've gone into a journey and you want to drive Zack Snyder out, and then their idea, let me prove to you what charlatans they are. They thought, let's attach Joss Whedon's name. He's just made an Avengers movie. You know, the first crossover movie, right? Superhero crossover movie, right? And it's massive and it's made so much money and it's breaking box office records. All we have to do is attach his name. He don't have to make a very good movie. These idiots are going to watch it because Joss Whedon's name's attached. They underestimated their own customers, their own consumer. They underestimated their audience. They think they're smarter than us. New Hollywood isn't populated with smart people. It's populated by dumb people. This is why the Snyder fans are exposing WB even today. Because let's make no mistake, the people who drove Zack Snyder out, mostly, are still secretly at WB. I mean, Walter Hamada's name came up in a new Ninja Turtles R-rated movie that he's developing. An R-rated Ninja Turtles movie. Walter, are you fucking sure about that? Best of luck with that. Not. Anyway, so he's not at WB anymore. So their idea was to bring in Joss Whedon. They lied to Joss as well. They said, right, if you can turn around this Justice League movie, if you can save this Justice League movie, right, then we'll give you the Batgirl movie you've been craving for. He came to WB to do a Batgirl movie. He didn't want to touch, Justice League. He didn't want to take it from Zack Snyder and have to recycle it. Yeah, he would have made his own Justice League movie, but Justice League, despite the nickname, isn't really his movie. Basically, he had a list of things he had to do. He had check boxes he had to do from the studio. Make the colours brighter. Put gags in there, right? Change the tone from a darker tone to a lighter tone. Nothing that was put into that movie was Joss Whedon's actual idea, right? But apparently he was mocking Zack Snyder on the set. We've heard a lot of shit, and Joss Whedon lost his temper with actors. He didn't act properly. He got involved. I think a short time after he got involved, he realised it was a shit show. The actors didn't want him there. The actors wanted Zack there. They were upset. Zack is an actor's director. He knows how to motivate people. He knows how to make people fall in love with him. He's a nice guy. He's a gentlemanly director. Actors like Zack Snyder. So it's very interesting because if we go back to the 1930s, quite often they'd go through 3 or 4 directors. The Wizard of Oz did, which, as you know, I've become obsessed with recently. And in the end, they brought in Victor Fleming to save the Wizard of Oz. And indeed he did. But then just as at the end of the shoot, he had to go off and save Gone with the Wind, which he also did. Victor Fleming's name is on both 1939 movies, 2 of the biggest films of all time, Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. But he was, he saved the movies, and that's what they wanted Joss Whedon to do. But to save a movie, you've got to be able to have a certain, you've got to have a calming influence, and that's not Joss Whedon, as we can see now. You're taking over a production from a much-loved director in terms of the way the actors and the crew feel about him, and you can't come in with your DMs and upset the apple cart. I mean, your presence is already upsetting the apple cart because they don't want you there. They want Zack Snyder there. So his behaviour was never going to be a good thing. Now, Ray Fisher was of the mind that he wanted to stick to what Zack wanted to do. But, unfortunately, that's not what the studio wanted, right? So Whedon had to obey. He wanted his Batgirl movie, right? So he had to do what they told him. But Ray Fisher wasn't having it. And I get that. And, this cast and crew were in a horrible position where they had fallen in love with this version of Justice League Zack was making. And all of a sudden, this guy comes in, that vision of Zack Snyder comes crashing down, and this new plastic bullshit vision is being implemented. as a if you're a member of a crew, or you're the actors or anyone on this production, all of a sudden you're seeing this huge visionary production from this visionary director, and then you've got Joss Whedon coming in saying, I'm going to tell you to look in the sky and say blue, and you're going to say it. And if you don't, you're out of here. You've signed a contract. You have to do what I tell you. This is the problem with the industry. Once you sign on that dotted line, you're fucked. You have to do what they tell you. And this is the problem with being involved with huge studio movies. These situations can happen. 1 minute, as I say, they're making a visionary movie from Zack Snyder. All of a sudden, they're making a piece of shit. But it goes worse than that, because when you see the finished product, or the unfinished product of Justice League, because Justice League is basically a rushed, unfinished movie, a recycled movie, right? You can pretty much tell how bad it is. The CGI is terrible and it's rushed. I don't mind the score, but again, that was rushed. So, the movie was horrible. We saw Cavill's upper lip, but that was really the red flag. That's what made us kind of see that there was a problem here. At the end of the day, whatever you think about Snyder's BVS and Man of Steel, you started on a journey. You allowed the man to go into principal photography into a Justice League movie. You can't suddenly drive him out, wind him up so heavily while he's mourning the death of his daughter that he has no choice but to leave. Lie about the reasons he's leaving. Actually, disgustingly using his daughter's death as an excuse. You, the studio. Lying that Whedon and Snyder were good friends and Snyder brought Whedon on to finish the movie. Bullshit after bullshit. I fell for it. I believed it. They're both directors in the industry, elite industry. It's not unbelievable that those two would be mates, would be friends, right? So it's absolutely disgusting. Again, it doesn't matter whether you like Snyder or not. This behavior was disgusting. Here's the sad truth. Now, this is interesting, actually. Justice League is a horrible unfinished movie, but it made around 650 million globally. But Mick, you sound impressed by that. Well, I am. $650 million globally for a piece of shit is amazing. It's not that far away from what Man of Steel made, right? I mean, they basically got their money back, right? They didn't make any money, but they got their money back. But think about it. Imagine, instead of Justice League, imagine if they released Zack Snyder's 2.5 original theatrical cut of his Justice League, which was what they were going to do, right? It clearly was going to make more than 650. If a piece of shit can make 650, if an unfinished piece of shit can make over 650, then clearly Snyder's movie, which would have been way superior, obviously wouldn't have been the Snyder Cut, it wouldn't have been the 4-hour, artistic masterpiece of the Snyder Cut. But it goes deeper than that as well. Because before Whedon even came on, we were going to have 2 Justice League movies originally. Zack wanted to do 3, and they cut it down to 1 movie. And, all of a sudden, that vision that Zack had is cut to pieces already. So they do cut it down from 2 to 1, and then they're on his back constantly to brighten it up, to put more gags in. Ridiculous. An absolute mess. You either go with someone or you don't, right? The point is, they rushed through it. Man of Steel, BVS. They didn't wait to see the reaction of BVS. They just went straight into principal photography of Justice League. Once the reaction of BVS, the divisive reaction, I love all of Snyder's DC movies, right? Let's not get it twisted, but there was a divisive reaction. By the time they got the divisive reaction, it was too late to put the brakes on the movie. They'd already invested in it. Zack was making the movie. It was too late. And once you get in that situation, you've got 1 or 2 options, right? even though they'd already spent some money, they could have said, no, Wolzak, look at the reaction to this movie, right? We liked Batman versus Superman. The studio did like Batman versus Superman. Don't get it twisted. I mean, he got a standing ovation when the studio watched it. And from watching Ben Affleck's version of Batman in BVS, they signed him up to make a trilogy of his own Batman movies. So that's how impressed they were with BVS. Do not get it twisted. They reacted to the public's reaction. But what should have happened if they were that scared of BVS and the reaction to it, they should have ceased production immediately on Justice League. That means they wouldn't have spent any more money. And if they want, as I've said before, if they wanted Whedon to come in, bring him in to start the franchise from the beginning. Not recycle what Snyder was doing. Absolutely done. And if you think this is old news, Mick, why are you going on about it? No, because this is what they're still doing. For example, the brand new Captain America movie, New World Order. They've been writing it, shooting it, then going back to basics, writing it, shooting it, then going back to basics and reshooting it. That's what they do today. The people that they're putting in charge of these movies these days are so untalented, so shouldn't be in this industry because they've already driven out all the talented people in the industry. Now, what's amazing about the Justice League situation, we're talking about Joss Whedon here. We're talking about Buffy, right? We're talking about Angel. So the man created television masterpieces, but for a lot of people, we're hearing behind the scenes, he wasn't a good person to work with. Now, obviously, there was a controversy with the Justice League situation once the Snyder Cut was greenlit to be put together. Ray Fisher came out and admitted that when he was at Comic-Con with Whedon, he lied about Joss Whedon and his positivity about Joss Whedon. And he basically told the world what Joss Whedon was like on the set. He then forced WB to create an investigation. Now, in not so many words, Fisher tried to insinuate that the investigation was a stacked deck. And he fought and he fought and he fought. To be fair, he really did fight and he put his career on the line. But that really did expose Whedon. And later on, after, Fisher put his career on the line, all the other people who had stayed quiet during all of that, right, all of a sudden were coming out, sharing their stories that Whedon was a problem on Angel and on Buffy. All of a sudden, everyone else speaks out. Isn't it funny? So, it's not funny, it's serious, but this is how this industry works. It ain't a nice place to work. Forget what you see in the marketing and publicity. Elite entertainment isn't a nice place to work, and you're surrounded by divas and very, very hardened people. All these people want to do is make a product. That's all they care about, right? Making the product. That's it. You're just a commodity. It's a horrible life and it's a horrible place. You may be lucky now and again that you work with someone like Snyder who wants to create a good environment for his actors, his crew, right? But Zack Snyder is a rarity. We know that. And those of us who understand this industry, and any of you who think it's a better industry to work in today, right? And at the end of the day, when I hear people like Rebecca Ferguson, as I've mentioned before, cry that she was shouted at by another actor, I'm thinking, have you never walked onto a set before? This is a common occurrence on a set because there's lots of practices in the industry that we should put a stop to, and there's a line you shouldn't cross. But you can't create a utopia. You can't. There's always going to be arguments on set. There's always going to be arguments in lots of walks of life, in lots of industries, in lots of workplaces. You're not going to stop that. But there's obviously a line that shouldn't be fucking crossed. And, people have got to be held to account if they're breaking the law on the set. If they're trying to sexually harass anyone, a boy, a girl, a man, a woman, whatever, right? Or rape or anything. They're the lines you cannot cross. but one person shouting at another that you're never going to get the utopia that you nut jobs want to. So I don't know what kind of treatment that Whedon was, giving the Justice League cast. I don't know how deep it went. There was some horrible rumours, unsubstantiated rumours, by the way. There was one that Joss Whedon locked Gal Gadot in a cupboard. Now, I can't prove that. It's an allegation, we must say, allegedly. Yes, I'm holding this controller so that doesn't black out. Because it looks cool, so I thought, why not? But, yeah, so, look, there's so many levels to Justice League, but it was one of the most disgusting, embarrassing moments in Hollywood history. And as I say, this would never have happened in old Hollywood. There's lots of stories about what goes on in new Hollywood. Old Hollywood, right? There's the Dick Donner situation and the pressure he was under, right? And you could compare, what happened with Donner. Donner made Superman 78 and was making Superman 2 at the same time. The money ran out, so they just focused on the first movie. Then they fired Donner and they brought in Richard Lester to do a similar thing that Joss Whedon did with Justice League. What's the difference between Richard Lester's Superman 2 and Joss Whedon's Justice League? Well, I'll tell you, Superman 2 is a competent, completed movie by a competent director, and Justice League is a rushed, unfinished piece of shit. So basically, very similar things happened in terms of Dick Donner and Richard Lester, but at least Lester was allowed to actually make a fucking movie and finish a movie. I'm gutted we never got 4 or 5 Dick Donner Superman movies, because they would have been way better than what Richard Lester gave us with that sequel. And that's a shame. And the Donner cut of Superman 2 shows us the potential of what we could have got from Dick, not only with that Superman sequel, but with it in the future. But the real reason I wanted to talk about Justice League today was just to remind you that nothing has changed in this industry. Now let's talk about Doctor Who. They finally announced the casting, and I've got her name written down, and it's Virada Setu. So Virada Setu has been cast as a brand new Doctor Who companion for season 2. This is the worst kept secret in Doctor Who fandom. Long lenses are on sets all the time. We knew she was there, and the Mirror was reporting that Millie Gibson would be removed as Ruby Sunday at some point in season 2. Now, with the announcement of Virada Setu as this brand new companion, people are saying, you see, Millie's not going. They've announced that Millie and Virada will be both in season 2. But what they haven't confirmed is if Millie will be in the whole entirety of season 2. So here's the thing, here's the reality, that Millie Gibson could still leave before the end of season 2, or worst case scenario, best case scenario, she leaves at the end of season 2. But there's no evidence to say that Virada's arrival doesn't signal the end of Millie Gibson's Ruby Sunday. A fleeting appearance. Yes, she's going to be in this brand new first season and a lot of season 2. But why have they brought in a second companion? Well, it's not like, old Doctor Who didn't have, more than one companion in the TARDIS. We saw it with Chibnall's era as well. That's not the issue. That's not my problem. Why is this happening? And apparently there's a rumour that Virada, I have to keep on looking at her name, I've wrote it down because I'm finding it hard to remember it. But there's a rumour that Virada's character will be a historical companion. If true, hallelujah. Because I've been begging them for a historical companion in the revival for years. They've been so obsessed with a contemporary young companion from the modern era for so long. It's become a dry and stale concept. And we all know that. I want to meet an interesting historical companion. But here's the thing about Verada Satu. She's connected to Disney. She's worked with Disney before. So it's clear to me that Verada Satu was a casting not from Russell T Davies, but by Disney. Make no mistake that Doctor Who is being run by Disney and not Russell T Davies, not Russell T Davies, and certainly not the BBC. There's no question, her casting proves it. And there's also another myth I want to break here. That Disney have injected so much money. The other day I heard a rumour that Anita Dobson, who's now part of this new era of Doctor Who, said she just filmed in one of the most expensive Doctor Who episodes of all time. This is simply not true, everyone. The money that Disney are putting in is not that much. Now, before you start shouting and commenting, listen to me very carefully. They've announced a Beatles movie without any Beatles music. What is the point of doing a Beatles-themed episode if you can't use their fucking music? That's the whole fucking point. That's the perk of doing an episode about the fucking Beatles. But of course they would have to pay for the rights. And they don't want to pay for the rights to play Beatles music because playing Beatles music is very expensive. But if this was an era of Doctor Who that had so much funding from Disney, the money wouldn't be an option, would it now? You're going to see in this brand new era, in this brand new series especially, how cheap these episodes are going to be. Space babies, basically babies found in space and in the TARDIS and delivered to their homes. I think it's just as basic as that. A cheap first season premiere, for example. We've already spoken about the cheapness of the Beatles episode. I don't expect to see any expensive, high concept, expensive budget episodes. You're going to see that you are being led up the garden path by Russell T Davies and Disney. I am pretty convinced if Disney secretly don't already own Doctor Who, they very soon will. This is Disney's Doctor Who, everyone, and it's going to be as crap and as soulless and as surface level as everything else Disney do today. And the red flags are already there. So what is the real motivation of having Verada Satu in a free TARDIS team? Well, it's quite simple. It's box ticking. They wanted a brown girl in the TARDIS as well as a white girl. Even though we've got a black doctor and a white companion at the moment, that's not enough for these people, for these extremists. You can't just have a white companion, even though you've got a black doctor with her. So you've got one black actor and one white actress, right? So what's the problem? That's diversity. No, they had to bring in someone that they've worked with before, right? Someone who's diverse to be there with Millie Gibson. But the rumours, I believe the rumours that Millie leaves mid-season 2 are still true. Now them announcing, RTD announcing that Millie and Verada will be in this second season together doesn't matter because they can be in a few episodes together and Millie still leaves mid-season. Now for all we know, Verada could be an iconic historical companion and it could really work. She could be a better companion than Millie's companion, which won't be too hard with the introduction they gave her in that Christmas episode. The church on Ruby Road. Right, it wasn't a great introduction to a companion. I think it's the worst. In terms of revival, Doctor Who revival history, it's the worst introduction to a companion I've ever seen. Very, very surface level. When we see all the marketing pictures of Millie, the interviews, they've made her look really sexy and tarty. Now, she looks great. And if she's happy with that look, that's great. But if you ever see her do an interview for Coronation Street, she looked nothing like that. And I mean, they've got this kid dressed up as a fucking supermodel. I think it's unbelievable. I thought because they cast Millie, and this is why I was so excited, they were going to make her a grounded, character-driven companion. But from what I can see, what RTD is doing with Millie, it's all very looks and surface level. And you know what? It's the same thing with the new Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa. He looks attractive, he looks surface level. The new TARDIS, which they've certainly spent a lot of money on, and I think the whole of the budget from Disney has gone on that TARDIS. Again, very surface level. A brand new sonic screwdriver that looks nothing like a screwdriver, very surface level. It looks very flashy, it looks very swish. As I say, doesn't look like a fucking screwdriver, but anyway, you know, it's supposed to be progress, right? We're saying. So there's a lot of red flags with this Disney Doctor Who. But I think that Russell T Davies has very little control of any of it.